Greetings! I am Tantus Naraban Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. Today we're again getting back to talking about some of the role-playing games we talked about in the past. Today I'm going to give some more information on Pathfinder. I'm going to go over Pathfinder's equipment. Now, I have talked about a lot of things in Pathfinder, but when you get equipment, you're either going to take the average starting gold, or you're going to roll. Depends on your game master's preference. I'm more for the average, just because it makes it easier. Now, each piece of equipment, armor, weapon, will have a price listed to it. But let's talk about weapons first. Now, weapons are divided into a lot of categories here. The first thing is simple, martial, and exotic. You're probably not going to worry about exotic too much. You're probably going to worry about simple and martial. Most classes will tell you have simple weapon proficiency, or you have simple and martial, or you have simple and maybe a couple of weapons from martial. Sometimes they will list weapons or equipment from the exotic list too, and then they are part of your list. But getting the exotic is a feat. You take a feat for an exotic weapon that you have proficiency in it. Now, if you have a weapon that you're not proficient in, you get -4 to use it. So that's something I'm going to tell you now, and that's something when you're deciding your weapons, what you want to do. Now, all the weapons, after they're divided here, are divided between melee and ranged. Now, ranged are their own special section. It'll tell you all about them. But the melee is divided up even farther. The melee is light, one-handed, and two-handed. A light weapon is a weapon you can use when you're two-weapon fighting off-handed without penalty. It's a smaller weapon. One-handed uses one hand. You have the option of a one-handed weapon, using it two-handed. And a two-handed weapon, you need to use two-handed. Now, what are the differences between using all these? Light weapon, I add my strength bonus. One-handed weapon, I add my strength bonus. Two-handed weapon, I add 1.5 my strength. Or light weapon, or one-handed weapon I'm using two-handed, 1.5. Both of those are options. Now, in the book they will list damage, range if it has it, critical, which will tell you if the critical is just 20. If it is just 20, they won't list anything. It will usually just say ×2, ×3, ×4. That's how much damage you multiply your damage by when you're critical. You roll the dice again, you add all the special numbers again. Any kind of extra dice you may add are usually not multiplied unless it tells you. So something like a sneak attack, that wouldn't be multiplied unless you have some kind of special ability that allows you to. Now, it also might just say like 19 to 20 ×2, meaning that you threaten a critical on a 19 or 20. Now, 20 is still an automatic hit. When you roll a 20, you hit. The same reasoning, when you roll a 1, you miss, period. Just confirmation is something that may be needed. Like if you look at the 19, you have to see, am I still hitting it? You might not sometimes. You're in a lot of trouble if that's happening, but it could occur. And after that, it's type. Type is if it's bludgeoning, slashing, or piercing damage. This comes up when fighting certain enemies, not all the time. And then of course they list special, the special abilities of weapons. Now there are a number of them. There's brace, meaning that if I can set myself against a charge, I can ready if someone's charging at me and get extra damage. There's disarm, meaning my weapon is good at disarming someone, that I can use that as a bonus pretty much for free. I still might have some problems with it, incurring attacks. I haven't talked about disarming, but it means a disarm weapon is better at it. Same with a tripping weapon. A tripping weapon is better at that. There's monk weapons. It will list what weapons a monk can use and still get their flurry attacks. Monks gets a flurry. Monk weapons, they can flurry with. There's non-lethal weapons. These are weapons that they do non-lethal damage. You're good for knocking someone out. There are reach weapons. Reach weapons give you an extra 5-foot reach. Means I can be a step away from someone and still hit them. Now the disadvantage is I have to be a step away from someone or I can't hit them. So if they're right up next to me, I can't hit them with my pole arm. And there's double weapons. Double weapons are special weapons that you can use with two-handed fighting that it counts as you having a light weapon offhand. That means each side counts as a weapon, and you can do, like holding a staff and hitting it with one side and then the other. You're using it as a double weapon. Now, these are all the weapons, and they list a whole list of weapons in here. A couple other books add some more weapons in, but these are the basic ones you're going to want to look at and want to think about. This is the best list as there is, pretty much. The other weapons are sort of brought in. Not as major to think about them normally. You don't usually have to think about the full list for most characters. Let's talk about armor. Armor is divided between light, medium, and heavy armor, and then there's also shields. Now, all armors have certain things. They give a bonus to your AC, depending on if light armor is going to give the smallest bonus, heavy armor is going to give the largest bonus. Shields are going to just be something extra that you can add a shield bonus to your AC. Now, they also have a max dex bonus. This means this is the maximum modifier that your dexterity can add to AC when you're using a certain type of armor. The heavier the armor, the smaller that number is. The lighter the armor, the larger it is. There's also armor check penalty. Armor check penalty is a penalty that you apply to strength and dex-based skills when you're wearing that armor. Heavier armor, again, has a higher armor check penalty. If I'm in full plate, I'm going to have a harder time tumbling around than if I'm in leather armor. There's also a speed change. The heavier armors also change your speed. If you're wearing medium armor, your speed is going to go down to 20 if your speed was 30, or 15 if it was 20 as your base speeds. It's going to drop by that because you're wearing the armor and it's interfering with your speed. The disadvantage of heavy armor is that you run slower after that, so you still have that same speed penalty, but now you can't run as fast. Instead of running at ×4 your speed, you run at ×3 in heavy armor. There's also arcane spell failure. What this means is, if I'm a wizard or some kind of spellcaster that casts arcane spells, then if I'm wearing that armor, I have to roll a percentile to see if my spell works when I'm in that armor. It means that as a wizard, you're probably not going to want to cast spells in armor. Granted, there are things like Bard, which says you're allowed to wear light armor and ignore that bonus. And there are other times feats and stuff that can make it. You can wear heavier armor down the line, as something like, let's say, a Bard already starts with light. He can move on to medium and heavy and be like, I can be in plate mail and cast spells. Maybe that's your character build. You can certainly build something like that. It's probably not going to be the best idea unless you build something really smart. So moving on from armor, they list special materials. Now, most likely, you are not going to start with any special materials. There are a few that are affordable. There are certain things that can be silvered you can buy, and cold iron is not that expensive. These things are good against overcoming damage reduction of certain creatures. Certain creatures. Not all of them. Other things have bigger advantages. There's a material called mithril, which is really great for armor if you want it to be basically a little lighter and less penalties for wearing heavier armor. Adamantine is really great because it's a very tough metal that kind of cuts through other materials very well. These things are usually expensive, and you're not going to probably start with them as a beginning first level character. Moving on here, it gets into the gear and equipment. There's a whole list of equipment, the basic equipment. They list mounts and vehicles, lodgings and food, services, alchemical items, tools and kits. They break down a lot of different things in the gear section that sort of whatever you can afford and want to buy and think your character could use. Things like backpacks are useful, rope, grappling hook, maybe you want some torches if you don't see in the dark, lanterns, oil, tents, bedrolls. All these things can be very useful. There's a whole list of equipment, and they do tell you what a lot of this equipment does and how it affects you. There are other things that are more expensive you might not start with. It's good to know what they are, just so that if you come across them, like if I come across Alchemist Fire, I probably didn't buy this with my starting fire character, but I know I can throw it, and it pops and does fire damage on whatever I hit it with. There you go. Alright, so that's all the equipment there is. And again, you might have some leftover gold. It's good to have leftover gold. You're probably going to want to find a place to spend it in-game. Like, the first thing you do, if you go to an inn and you don't have any money, you're out of luck. Well, there's another word I wanted to use, but I'm not going to use it today. Anyway, so that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. Leave a comment if you have anything to talk about, any suggestions, any discussion on this video. Please subscribe if you already have. Join the Empire. We're always looking for more citizens. Share this video if you think there's anybody else that can learn for this or would be interested in it. Again, as I said, always looking for more members to the Empire. And I bid you a farewell.